Quiet, quiet, friends. I have a tale to tell before the tavern closes tonight. I have come a very long way and seen so many places. I have heard many stories, and I am happy to be here now to share them with you. So, gather round. Last we met, I promised to tell you about a magician of unparalleled skill, though they are not the typical arcanist or witch. This spellcaster is a bard. I found them near the start of my journey in a large city to our south. She was short, with green skin, slightly pointed ears, a muscular body, and long curly black hair. A goblin in common titling, although I would learn why she didn't approve of that title soon enough. On her face sat a pair of dark eye shades that her people wear to protect their sensitive eyes from the sun. She had made the journey south to purchase some supplies, but asked if I wanted to venture back north with her to see her mountain hall. I had no idea she was a magician, but had long heard the whispered tales of vast cities beneath the Wayward Mountains. I could hardly say no. She introduced herself to me as Sidwell, and she was one of the kindest people I have ever known. Across her back was slung a lute, far different from my own. For one, it was longer, and instead of a wide tear-shaped body, it had a circular body that was bound in animal skin. This allowed her to play it like a drum and a lute simultaneously, though it had far less strings than my own instrument. We walked a few days north, sidling around the desert to walk the dry, windy steppe-lands before coming across a door carved into the side of a hill. She removed the pick from her hip and pried the door open. I expected to hear the silent whistling of the wind, but instead I could hear a murmur of voices, the clanging of pickaxes into stone forming a near-perfect rhythm as we walked down the well-manicured stone steps. We reached the end of the tunnel, a perfectly cut square space. I wondered where the sound was coming from, but didn't have to wait long, as the woman started playing her lute and the stone beneath us began a controlled descent into a sprawling cave. Maybe 3 long steps long and 4 long steps deep, the dwarves had built their homes in tall spires from the cave floor to the ceiling. 10 families lived in each spire. I could smell them cooking sausages and mushrooms. I could hear the clanging of the picks accompanied by the working songs of the Stunlord's people. Sidwell removed her goggles and kept playing. Her palm slapped the drum while her fingers elegantly plucked the strings. My apologies, it seems the thunder has a flair for the dramatic tonight. Regardless, the sprawling city was filled with businesses, homes, and torchlight. I saw no giant-kin dwarves here, only the mountain clan with their broad shoulders and wild hair. However, I did see orcs. Green folk of almost all kiths and clans. The ogre folk had their own taller homes within the city. The Bark clan orcs had the same, only slightly shorter. Around me I saw people like Sidwell, all working magic around the city, operating the great stone lifts, keeping the forges lit, aiding the miners in their tunnels. She told me that the Ogriver, as they prefer to be called in the Stunlord Dwarven kingdoms, are often magic workers. I asked her why, and she just laughed and offered me a drink. The dwarves make a spirit with the mushrooms they can find in their caves, called pilsigite, which I believe translates to sweet mushroom. We sat down inside a street-side Wirtsausa, a tavern for the workers of the city. Sidwell told me that dwarves are rarely born with magical gifts. Few dwarves can imbue items and use little magic. Even less can use traditional spellcraft. The Orcish people, on the other hand, are very often magic by nature. Hundreds of years ago, before humans had fled to Lorelei, a war between dwarves and orcs left both clans on the edge of extinction in the region. the princess of the dwarves fell in love with an orcish war mage, and together the two put an end to the war. From then on, dwarven and orcish culture are one and the same in the western dwarven halls. Aughriver are the children of orcs and dwarfs, gifted with the stature and night vision of the mountain dwarf and the magical prowess and power of the orcish people. Sid explained that the Aughriver who fled the mountain halls often find hardship in the east, becoming bandits. The title of goblin is a curse, spat at her kind in the streets by those who think she is but a common monster. Orcs of all kith face this treatment. Orcs, ogres, Aughriver, Imperiorcs, gnolls, Dryadi, all face the same wary glances. However, in the cities of the Stun Lords, Aughriver are treated as the most important pin in their society. Without the magic of the green folk, the great lifts would not move, the forges would not burn half as hot, the food would not grow, and a cave-in would kill thousands. I decided to stay in the city for a week or so. I watched dwarven miners haul 100-stone weights of iron and other minerals from their tunnels. Aughriver mages growing massive fields of crops with no sunlight to speak of, and of course, the oldest tradition of the mountain dwarves, the Timekeeper's Song. Without access to sunlight, dwarves often don't know what time of day it is in the massive and lush halls of the Stun Lords. So, to keep the people aware, each day one volunteer goes to the center of the city, where their playing can be heard for long steps around and a giant bell waits. They begin to drum. At the moment of the hour, they play a special flourish, chime the bell, and the music changes. All mountain dwarves know which song means which time, and the song goes from the morning into the next, playing all through the night. It is an exercise in endurance, as the body will ache and sweat under the intense heat of the cave and the exercise of the drum. But the job must be done. I would wake to the sound of drums, and later in the day fall asleep to it. Sid often took up this duty, as she simply loved to play. However, that was not her main purpose. One day, Sid asked me if I wanted to see what the dwarves' mining actually looked like. She drank her Star Watcher's brew, her eyes shining like the moon, as we followed a group of dwarves, orcs, and Aughriver into the tunnels. Sid began to play. The way her strings reverberated was odd, like a song I had heard 1,000 times before but never noticed. She told me that all magic is based in music, even if arcanists and mages tend to disagree. When the mind is attuned to magic, all things sing. All living things are home to one song, entirely their own. And when a magician casts a spell, they are altering their own song, and the song of the world around them. When a dragon breathes its deadly fire, it's changing its own song to that of flames. She continued to play her lute, pounding her palm on the drum and plucking the strings as her eyes scanned the stone walls that seemed to stretch infinitely into the deep. She told me her purpose was to make sure the dwarves didn't dig too deep, lest they risk falling into a place far too unpleasant. At the time I didn't know it, but she was referring to the demon halls, the labyrinth carved during the War of Sorrows that lies deep, deep below the ground. The dwarves slammed their picks into the stone with the same percussion as the timekeeper's drum back in the city. We even walked in perfect beat with the song. It has a way of getting into your head. However, soon enough, we heard the most frightening sound I've ever heard. It was a roar, titanically loud, shaking the cave, echoing through the tunnels. The miners turned and fled, and as I turned too, I noticed Sidwell had not moved a single step. I told her we needed to flee, and she shook her head. She warned me that I should run to keep myself safe, but she had nothing to fear in these tunnels. Despite all logic, I decided to stay. Sid stepped in front of me and kept her eyes locked on the tunnel's depths, slowly changing the tune she expertly plucked on her lute from one of long reverberations to one of contemplation, a holding pattern of strings as she waited to see her threat. Suddenly, from the dark, a long creature, like a dragon without wings, dove from the shadows and began to rush towards us. Its clawed feet allowed it to climb on the walls and ceiling, so it darted towards us with extreme speed. I worried Sid wouldn't be able to hurt the thing, but soon enough a bright flash of light occurred. Around Sid, the pebbles and rocks began to rise and float, her hair rising and falling as she bid the winds and the earth to listen to her song. I had seen stone mages work in the great deserts. They use their magic to bid the sandstorm quiet. However, this was different. A perfect humanoid hand of stone began to assemble as the ground itself deconstructed and reforged, the earth shattering into pieces as it formed Sid's third arm. She grabbed the beast's leg and pulled it to the ground. Sid played faster and faster, the tune changing from heavy percussion to mostly strings. The whirlwind of her fingers made my mind feel quiet, almost sad. For such a rapid tune, it contained a sorrow. Soon, I saw why, as the drake's eyes went from poised and hungry to raw fear. Sid was playing the drake's song, speaking to its own soul in its own language. It seemed frightened, as she kept her eyes locked on the creature. She soon released it from its stone prison, and it ran off towards the dark. She began playing her stonework song again, and the tunnel slowly closed up in front of us. I could barely sleep that night. I had seen mages, and something about her magic seemed overwhelmingly powerful. However, the next day, tragedy struck. I awoke to the timekeeper's drum and the sound of shouting. Outside the doors to this hall, an army had formed. The Chimerite, a desert empire focused solely on collecting the most powerful magical objects in the land, had come to take whatever the dwarves of this hall had and possibly use it to access the other halls of the Stunlords. The enchantments made by the Stunlord mountain dwarves are legendary, so it is no wonder that the Chimerite had come. I saw dwarves, orcs, ogres, ogriver putting on armor, grabbing weapons, readying themselves for siege. However, I did not see Sidwell. I heard someone say she had gone outside, so I quickly ran to the stone lift and was sent up the tunnel to the entrance. Outside, there she sat, her sun-blocking eye shades glinting in the light of a cloudless, windy day. She asked why I had come, but I stood in awe. At the bottom of the hill sat a massive war camp, maybe 100 tents, and a legion of men standing ready, as a man on a dark horse pranced before them. Sid had told the other dwarves to evacuate, find other halls, abandon hope of ever returning to the one they called home. Seemingly they listened, as when I returned to the city hours later, it was sealed and impossible to enter. However, in this moment, I sat with my friend. I asked what I could do, and she shook her head, reminding me that I am no mage and no warrior. She was here to stall the enemy, that was all. I begged her to flee. I told her we would find her another hall, and she just laughed. She was the mage bard of the Stunlord's southernmost hall, the stone singer, the music of the deep, and she would not flee. I bid her farewell with a hug, and went to a nearby hill to watch for a moment. The man on the dark horse rode to her, likely to demand surrender. As soon as he did, he quickly turned back to his army and began yelling for them to ready themselves. She did not stand. She sat upon her boulder and watched. Soon a cavalry charge of many men began to tear up the hill towards her. She stood and picked up her lute. With 1 pound of her drum, the horses all became startled, some still rushing towards her, but others breaking off from formation, a rare few entirely stopping. The horses who continued their charge were completely stopped as she began to play her strings, summoning a torrential rain in seconds, clouding the sky and turning the dirt to mud. As the cavalry struggled out from under their horses, the infantry and archers began their assault, a volley of arrows flying through the crowd towards the hill, only for Cid to change her song again, forcing a wall of mud to rise and catch the arrows. I suppose Cid had tired of being on the defensive as soon lightning began to strike the ground around her. Her song had grown rapid and bolts of lightning danced around her, striking soldiers to send them careening through the air. However, the Chimerites are not known for foot soldiers and archers. They are known for mages. As soon as the enemy magicians realized their army was losing, they stepped from their tents and began to march up the battlefield. Cid had caused a minor rout. However, infantry and archers of particular bravery remained, attempting to harm her however they could. She didn't notice the mages enter the field. One sent a bolt of starlight shaped like a scorpion across the field, and in her focus Cid was struck in the side. I watched her stagger and kneel, her fingers still playing rapidly. Beams of starlight and fire careened across the battlefield. Cid tried to defend, raising mud and stone to protect herself. She wasn't fast enough. The starlight cut through her, the flames burned her body. With her last shred of will, she performed the most impressive feat of magic I have seen to this very day. Her song stopped but a moment and changed. A heavy, aggressive tune. The entire field uprooted, the ground itself launching skyward. The mages seemed to hold on for dear life, some still sending bolts of magic down towards her. She kept playing. The stone she had lifted began to warp and collapse together in the air, forming a spherical prison the size of a house. Cid tried to keep playing the song, her music, screaming her desires to the world. However, she had become tired. Tired hands play poor songs. As her fingers failed to find the strings she needed, the prison began to shudder and collapse. I couldn't stand to continue to watch. Cid had fallen. She was lying in the dirt, playing her lute with the fury of a god. There is a statue of her now, in the northernmost Stunlord Hall. Sidwell the Grover, musician of the deep. I met few other mage bards in my travels. However, the mages I did meet told me that her magic was that powerful because it could be heard by all. The tune not only played in magical resonance, but for the world to hear. I have heard of mage bards covering fields in an array of starlight, building castles with their songs. Sidwell was one of few incredibly gifted spellcasters like her. I have met many Augraver, even those who wear the title of goblin proudly and know nothing of their heritage in the West. None as wonderful as Cid. This story has no great morals, only offering information. Mountain dwarves are often secretive, Augraver are rarely seen, and don't trust most people to talk to them in a friendly manner. I wish to return to the Stunlord's halls someday, learn the song of the timekeeper, and tell them of their hero, of my friend. I will offer you this, however. The world is a dark place. More so if you live underground. Be the light for one another. Be the tune to which people choose to dance. Be the beat that causes them to work hard with a smile on their face. Darkness is eternal. Fear is only logical. But to be the one person of kind heart and open spirit to defy all the world throws at you. Be like Cid. Be pure, undying light, sturdy as stone, brave as the lightning, and never let the world break you down. I know this story is a touch shorter, and for that I apologize. I didn't know Sid for that long. However, when we meet again, I will tell you a longer tale. An epic from the southern Kianmei Isles. A tale of sailors bold, the beasts of the deep ocean, magic, warfare, and the bravery required to stand in the face of oppression and fight back. The story of the finest sailor in the Kianmei Isles, Arif Alexander, the most courageous pirate the world has ever known. Until then, I thank you all for being here tonight, and, of course, a thank you to my friend Lorimer for playing a few bits of the Timekeeper's song for us. I have a tome of tales from every nation to share with you all. I have seen many monsters and many heroes. I have learned of the magic offered by the gods and the magic humans can conjure for themselves. I have seen warfare, and I have tales of peace. I cannot wait to tell them all to you. Good night, and thank you. Legends of Lorelei is an immersive, fantasy fiction audio drama produced by Livewire Stories. This show is written and produced by Gwen Fulman. The music you heard in this episode was composed and performed by Gwen Fulman. The Bard is played by Gwen Fulman. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please consider subscribing to our Patreon at Livewire Multimedia Stories to receive episodes a week early for only $2 a month. You will also receive updates on our projects, like the tabletop role-playing games or short films we've been working on. Check out our website at livewiretabletop.wixsite.com/livewire. Subscribe to us on YouTube, or join our Discord server in the description below. The best way you can support us is to show this to a friend. Thank you.